in this meta, now that we've returned back and there's no chamber there, I think that the middle section of the map, like up tube and kitchen, is going to be much more important than it has been in the past. If you can recall back to the previous meta, or, you know, the few before that, the Icebox was so fucking boring. Every round, oh, we're just going to do the same thing every time. And it just became so repetitive. And then you'd occasionally have like one tube round per half. Or you'd have one round where somebody goes and tries to do an A split and fails horrendously because those attacks never work. But basically, tube was not something that people were putting a huge amount of attention towards. There were like a couple of matches that saw a lot of mid play, but not much. And so I wanted to kind of showcase how in this game, I felt like we got a bit of a flavor for this area of the map being much more important now. And it was something that the casters talked about a bit, but I wanted to go in a bit more detail here. So we're starting off, this is the bonus round for Koi, and this is what the casters, what the desk were talking about. Wolfen taking this dash and going and breaking the turret. So he dashes, and he did this a couple of times where he dashes onto tube, and that gives him a good angle to be able to break the turret. And people normally use the turret instead of the alarm bot in this position, because the alarm bot, if you pop it at the top of tube, doesn't also cover this area towards orange, and it's also more easily broken with shock darts, for example. So this turret is really meta, and Wolfen's gone up here and broken it. And you can tell that Koi's game plan was break this, and as people rotate to fill this gap, either this way or this way, because orange is open and kitchen is open, right? So breaking that turret creates two open pathways. You can now go up through tube, or you can go underneath tube. And these people are going to have to rotate either off B or off mid or both in order to get some of that information back. So you could see that their game plan here was to do this and then basically immediately pivot into a B hit. So they instantly start pathing over towards B, and this is where NRG decide to just fight them. It was a really weird round where Artis gets like flashed out and then walls himself up. Really unusual idea from NRG. Never seen a Sage play it like that before, but quite a cool idea. But what you have also seen is these two players that were previously playing Boiler and here, where they can reinforce the A site. These two players have now rotated completely off. So you have like almost a 4-1 defense, which leaves A incredibly weak, right? So in this instance, they chose to really heavily reinforce the B site because they'd seen people pathing over there, the Viper walls there, that kind of thing. But clearly you can see that putting a lot of pressure on the middle of the map opens up the sides of the maps a lot. And that's the interesting part about Icebox, if there is anything interesting about Icebox, is this interaction between the center of the map and the extremities. This round ends up, you know, devolving into a B hit that I don't want to talk too much about. But here we go, round 5, and same game plan basically from Wolfen. So next time that they have a rifle v rifle round where there's the possibility of NRG being broken if they win it, Wolfen does the same thing. He dashes top tube, he breaks this right at the beginning, fairly default kind of look for him, and now they're going to go straight into an A hit. Unfortunately, they completely missed their timing here. Like, if you actually look at the reaction that it caused from the defenders. The Killjoys had to come around here. The KO and the Sova are pulled back. There's only one player actually on the A site, and you'll see as we continue playing this that happens even more. Even more of these players are dragged into mid. And so now what you're ending up playing is a 1-3-1 defense, where there's so much attention on the middle of the map. A knife has had to be used, but also all of these bodies. And it just weakens the extremities so much that you can group and go for these site hits. So really like the game plan from Koi. What they actually did was fucking sit around, though, for 40 seconds and waste their opportunity, while Wolfen was just sat in the curry spot in spawn. So don't understand why they ended up doing that. They must have anticipated some kind of reactive push from NRG, but I think they overcomplicated things a little bit. Don't know why their jet is in this kind of position. But you can see that it prompted the correct response that they were looking for from NRG. They just missed their timing. Anyway, going on to round 8. This is the last time I believe that Wolfen did this. Goes for the same kind of dash up. The turret's not there, though. So from here on out, FNS moved his turret all around the map. So sometimes he had it here looking down the kitchen. Sometimes he had it I think he put it like back here or something. One time he had it in this kind of spot, so it's looking for contact here. You know, he was just moving it around the map, basically. And he was putting his alarm bot most of the time at the top of Tube. But this time they have Victor pushing. And as the caster said, Wolfen realizes that something's different, drops down, and listen, I don't think he knew that Victor was there, but he reacts to it and he fucking murks him. And that's another part that NRG were just losing so many fights that they should have been winning because they're slow to get their heads in games, at least early on in tournaments. But okay, so Wolfen's able to find that pick. Here's where things get a little more interesting, though. In the next round, sorry. So here, Koi takes a timeout, and FNS reads the fact that they're going to go for a tube push. They haven't gone for a tube push basically the entire time, but they have been doing this like Wolfen dash pressure into kitchen. And FNS makes the read that it's going to be a tube push. So look at the Killjoy setup here. So he's got the turret to be able to watch towards mid. And then he puts down Nanoswarm, Alarm Bot. And I think he has the second Nanoswarm down there. No, he's still got the second Nanoswarm in his hand. But this Killjoy setup, he's stretched himself a little too thin here, I think. In that I would like to see somebody else able to watch his orange for him so that he can concentrate on doing other stuff. But the general idea with this is FNS is in a position to be able to punish Wolfen if he goes for a dash, someone if they push underneath. So, and his back is being covered by the alarm bot. And the Nanoswarm that he pops off the alarm bot's contact is going to push people either forwards into kitchen where he can fight them, or back where he can try to wallbang them into tube. So I think that this is a pretty good read from FNS. It's exactly what ends up happening as well. Koi end up pathing pretty much all of their players into tube. And the execution just doesn't quite work because FNS is got his crosshair placed so firmly on orange that he can't quite flick to the Nanoswarm in time, and Wolfen pops his dash. And so FNS ends up having his ankles broken just a little bit. But overall, a pretty good read from FNS, understanding that coming out of a timeout, they're going to do something interesting. And also the fact that he can just hold mid with this setup on his own, even against what Wolfen was doing, allows them to be playing a 2-1-2 defense, where the extremities are much more solid compared to what we'd seen before, where they were having to put so much attention on mid. Like I said, it doesn't exactly work, because as the alarm bot takes contact, he spins round, pops the Nanoswarm, but unfortunately, you just can't quite react quickly enough. And so they've already gotten past it. And that's also one of the problems of playing off alarm bot contact, is that they're on top of it by the time it gives you any information. But he does manage to dip down into this position and get a kill. And Som should have been able to get another kill, but this was the round where he had the massive whiffage. But we're not going to show that. Are we now? We're not going to show that. Alright, we're going to show that one more time. So round 15, though, this is where things get cooking. Because NRG are showing us, and FNS is showing us, on the attack side, like he said in the in that interview, this shows why FNS was so confident that he could deliver them results on their attack side. This is the bonus round, and look at the bonus round strat that they come up with. It's so nice. So they're going to default and drag people to the edges of the map, right? So they're putting pressure with 2 players towards A, 2 players towards B, and only 1 watching mid. So Som just has to watch mid, and then they throw the knife towards A, so it looks like they're taking some room on A, and FNS leaves his alarm bot there in case they push up. So Wolfen's been suppressed. They have to take a step back. They have to respect the fact that NRG could be taking some space in A, and they're not going to move off the site too quickly. They have 2 players over towards B as well. They throw a recon dart, and now they're transitioning into a B split. It's so fast. The knife has almost not even disappeared. I mean, Wolfen is basically still suppressed. There's still 3 players on A thinking that this could be them scaling up behind the knife. And instead, FNS and Som are going together through tube. And the reason why this defaulting is so important at the beginning of the round is because by dragging people to the outsides of the map, and in this instance, making it a 1-1-3 defense, they ensure that kitchen is going to be open. So Kitchen, there's no reason to be playing here. And even if there was somebody there, it's quite likely that they would have moved away to a different position. So at the moment, it's only the turret holding this spot. And with only the turret holding the spot, that allows FNS to go solo into Kitchen. And that means that Som doesn't have to hold his hand, so Som can watch his back in case he gets reflanked. So FNS is pretty confident. There's not going to be anybody here right now. Breaks the turret as he waits. So this is... FNS here is waiting for the timing of the rest of his players to get up into position, activate the Viper Wall, and start droning in. So FNS's timing is based off that kind of thing. Breaks the turret, gets in there, is just scanning around to see whether there's anybody else nearby, and he knows that the most likely threat is going to come from this part, because this is where the boiler play is going to rotate from. So he gets himself tucked into a spot where he can defend it. He throws down a Nano Swarm, which is really nice, just to block things off, and actually gets this kill on Starzo. And here's the important part, because Som didn't have to commit with FNS, Som is still here, watching FNS's back. And this is such a powerful post-plant position. That Coldamenta was going to go for a reflank there and try and reclear Tube. Som is in the perfect spot to try and prevent that. Som is also in a spot where he could challenge anybody else. And now he's in just such an unbelievably nasty post-plant position. Even when FNS dies, it's fine because Som's post-plant position is so good. And by pulling all of the rotators through Kitchen, you've given your B planters a ton of space to work with. They are so chilling right now. So anyway, fantastic bonus round called by FNS. Really fucking good bonus round. Things get a little scrappy here, but it's all still pretty set. Because Som can come in, Crashy still has his ult. Like, this is all fucking chilling for NRG. Great bonus round.
If Zen wasn't supposed to flank, they would have...
And yes, Som is super patient there. Doesn't get punished at all.
XQCL.
XQC, thank you for the 9 months. So here again, round 21, it's another Koi timeout. You remember I was saying on the other side, Koi called a timeout, and FNS had the perfect response to it. Koi calls a timeout again at round 21, and again, there's a banging response from FNS. And it's basically the same round that we just watched. But obviously there's been a bunch of other rounds in between those. You know, that was round 15. This is round 21. There's just been tons of other rounds in the middle. So it's not like he's doing it all the time. But he's picking and choosing his timings to run this stuff really well. So take a look at what they do here. They've got the turret to watch mid. Alarm bot to watch B. Could also have been Chet, right, since it was a timeout? Yeah, possibly. But I think for stuff like this, it's probably more likely to be FNS, especially because he has called it previously. So the important thing here is it seems to me to be an adaptation, which is why I'm giving more credit to FNS as well, because Wolfen goes for this push. This is another one of those mistake rounds from Koi. Previously, they tried the same setup where Trex droned through mid, and that allowed Wolfen to get set up with the operator here. And instead, Trex decides to save his drone in this round, and so there's no utility to allow Wolfen to set up on this line, and he just peeks into Victor, who's holding this exactly, and a turret, and so Wolfen gets his head ripped off. It looked like Starzo was going to play for the res, but this is just far too predictable, I think. If Starzo did decide to res in this instance, Crashies would just be ulting him, and I think it would be a travesty. I don't think there's any way that Starzo is going to be able to res this body, even if Starzo decided to swing with Trex pushing up and swinging as well. Even if they double swung and got the res off, I still think Crashies ulting from this position or from wherever he wants to ult from with a couple of players here in the turret, I think it's just too much. So I think Starzo realized that he was going to lose this. And what I like about it is NRG, FNS, I think, decides we want to occupy this space. So we don't want to commit to like A, for example, and leave that body available for a 5v5 retake res. So instead, they go for this call, which is to go for this tube push. So they're waiting around for a little bit, making sure that there's no aggressive reaction on the other side from Koi. But there's still a minute on the clock, right? Still tons of time. Crashies redrones this kind of area just to make sure that there's nobody in tube. And here they go. they go for this kind of tube push again.
They're going to police it as well. Look at this. Bodies.
So now there's no way you're getting this body back. You're not getting Starz's body back.
Because there's a big gap in kitchen.
And they leave Som behind again. So Som is like this defender of the bottom of tube. And this is already Som playing a post plant position, basically. And the other great thing about this is they've perfectly timed it with a triple push from Koi. So it's just the unbelievably most perfect timing you could ask for. But I'm not sure that FNS was specifically reading a triple push on the defense from Koi. He's just tried to find a good timing in the round, which this is.
Anyway, the information is so deep by the time they'll be on the site. And again, yes, they've cleared this far, so
and they get so deep into kitchen here.
How much can he do?
Shados is in a bit of a dodgy spot. I think from Shados' position, it's pretty unlikely that they're going to path like this to the site. And I think it's also pretty unlikely that they path like this to check your position. So even though it looks like Shados could be pushed from here or from here, I think it's actually quite reasonable in this instance for Shados to only be holding under orange. It's just quite unlikely that they go from the other positions. So some grabs some info, and now the positions are all over the place. But Som is still going to dominate tube. And Som's contact instigates a Sova ult. They don't account for Shados being in that position because it is a weird spot and they didn't clear it. But otherwise would have been a really good Sova ult, except, you know, Shados was still hanging around. And this was the round where they ended up delaying for so long. And, you know, the delay is coming here from FNS's lockdown. But it's also coming from the fact that there's so much of the map that Koi needs to re-clear before they can retake. They can't just do a classic retake where you assume everyone is behind this line of scrimmage. And so you know, the retakers can just addle in from any kind of place. You know, you can run, you can use whatever pathing you like. You know, this is a pretty standard Icebox pathing to go for the retake, right? You just run in from any direction. But you have to clear so many positions because these post planters can be all over the place if you go through successfully through kitchen. And so I thought that these rounds that FNS was able to pull out on their attack side, and particularly the way that both teams were putting a much higher priority on kitchen and tube and denying that information compared to previously, I think is a pretty important aspect of how this meta is going to end up playing. And if you recall, like, one of the best comps of the previous meta was playing Chamber and Killjoy. That was the Fnatic comp. And there's just way too much information for the defenders. You can't break it all as the attackers. It's not worth it. So Tube just became an impossible area to play. Whereas now, you can get way more opportunities to start pressuring mid. Gonna be real, I forgot what this round was. What was this one?
Like I said though, Koi still had enough behind that purchase to string together rifles here.
Oh, this was the crunch, I think. So this is where Koi had adapted to it. So NRG had gone kitchen a bunch of times. And NRG had gone kitchen a bunch of times. And in round 21, they went for that big kitchen push specifically, coming out of the timeout. And this is the round straight afterwards. And so I wanted to demonstrate how they dealt with it, because this was the one round where Koi actually dealt with the kitchen aggression.
Towards a site here for the rest of Koi.
So they drone into the, you know, it's the same principle happening here from NRG, that they are going to create A pressure to glue these A site players down so that you have to keep two people here. Because NRG own this part of the map, and also they're actively droning into your ult. So you've got to keep at least somebody there to play with Cold Dementors. So you know that there's going to be at least two players on A. And that means that probably there's one person watching mid, and there's probably two players over towards B, or, you know, some combination of that. But either way, by keeping two players here, you know that there's going to be a weaker avenue somewhere towards this B split. And in this instance, they actually have a shit ton of players over towards kitchen. So Shados puts his turret up
I guess like they've
late in the round, 1 minute 10.
this defense. This time around the turret is there. Shados.
I wouldn't call that weak.
And Shados still has double nanoswarm as well to play with. And as soon as Shados' turret takes contact here, they give up. Koi give up completely on holding this part of the map. They don't bother trying to hold the B extremity anymore. They just have Trex come back to help Shados. And then Trex and Shados do a great job at completely flattening this. Because Trex swings in while they're distracted looking at Shados. Recon Dart comes out as well. And now here's where the kitchen pushes get really messy. Because if you get trapped in this area, getting actively contested by players, the kitchen pushes still look as shit as they did in the previous meta. Which is why I think NRG did such a great job at causing pressure on the flanks early to give themselves space in mid. Because this is, if you just tried to do a kitchen push in your ranked games, this is what it would look like. You'd end up going in there. All of the people from, B would just leave their positions to fight you. And you wouldn't have any space to do the same things that NRG have been doing. But all of this activity, mostly the A activity that they've been doing, although, some of the B activity too, is just really important to pull people away from mid. And in this round, there were 3 players, 2 players around this area that were able to come and help. And once you get slowed down in kitchen, it's really difficult to fight your way out of it. So I thought this was a really nice adaptation from Koi to just give up on the B site, fight kitchen, and then Trex can turn his attention back to the B site as needed. But overall, it was quite a different map of Icebox. We saw some genuinely interesting things, mostly from the NRG side, but I do think that Koi clearly had some nice ideas too of how they wanted to apply pressure on the map. But you notice that the game plan from attack was basically opposite from both of these teams. The idea from Koi was we're going to apply pressure to mid early so that we pull players out of the extremities and free up ourselves to go for A hits and B hits, right? That's their overall big game strategy. And for NRG, on the rounds that I pulled, while they did other things as well, the game plan from NRG was we're going to default and apply pressure early to A and to B so that we open up an avenue for ourselves to go for these B site hits. And I think that push and pull is actually going to end up making Icebox an interesting map again. And maybe that's just me coping and hoping.